Right. If you have been following the development of women and women in technology, you would have heard of the work and effort that has been put in over the last 8 to 10 years around having more women and girls in the area of STEM. Today, I am very pleased that we have together a panel that, number one, Maria, who brings to us her perspective around governance, government infrastructure and funding, and how that contributes to that ecosystem. And then we have Natalia, who is from Google, and from her perspective, what's needed to bring more women into that particular community and into that profession. We have Vaishali. I need to read this out because she's just had a change of portfolio. Vaishali having a fairly challenging portfolio now on a global scale in terms of technology, media, and telecommunication from the Boston Consulting Group. And then we have Helen, all the way from Vietnam, and she is from the marketing and PR perspective. Interesting, isn't it? And then finally, I'm so glad that Aisha Bayalo is here to join us, and she has had years and years of experience how we can make transformation and change through education. Having change through education is not new. We hear that in every platform that we talk about, all right? But let's hear what she has to bring to this communication setting that we have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let my panelists spend a little bit of time on their key perspective of how we can bring about that change. A couple of questions I have for them, and then I want you, the audience, to focus on if we had a chance to 10 times accelerate to bring that change even closer than years away, what would be that one question that you want to ask? And I hope this time that we spend together, we will create a new narrative, a new perspective of how we can accelerate having more women and girls into the STEM and into the STEM pipeline. All right, so I'm going to get started with just having my panelists, what's your one key message when you read your the agenda that we have today? Building an inclusive future, be the change makers. What's your first impression around that? Maria.
Can I start?
Yes.
Okay. Well, hello to everybody. There's many things I would like to say, and so when I saw this agenda, I thought it was really interesting. But I'll try to be short. If I have, key messages, especially in the STEM area, it's about attracting young women to graduate in STEM disciplines. It's how to retain them, develop them, and also how we make models, role models, because we're also lacking in leading position, in scientific position. So if I would have to maybe three words, it's we need metrics. I was happy to hear that it was mentioned about this new law in France that you have to display for every company, more than 250 employees, you have to display a gender index and on the website. And if your score is under 75, you have to have an action plan. And after 3 years, if it hasn't improved, you might have a fine up to 1% of the payroll. So this is something important. I think metrics is important to make individual and collective awareness. The second thing for me would be visibility, especially in science. I think that it's sometimes difficult, but we have to speak out and make ourselves visible, not for ourselves, not for our careers, but mostly for the younger generation, because they need role models. And the third, I'm in the board of directors of research infrastructures, very physics, lasers, synchrotrons, and they're mostly run by men. And so as a board of director, I think I have the role to challenge, in a of course positive way, the senior manager to see what are their plans for succession, what are the plans for hiring women and how they develop them.
Thank you very much. From your perspective, and then as we go down this road, we will have the whole ecosystem being pieced together. Natalia.
Thank you, Cheryl. So for me, the message today is on two things. The first one is about access, and the second is about skilling. With regards to access, it cannot be that today 250 million fewer women are online than men, and this is happening globally. Access to information, access to the internet is oxygen. Women need access to the internet in order to grow, to learn new skills, to start a new business. This is not happening currently. My second point is about skilling. It cannot be that today, in the AI and data scientist world, only 20% of jobs related to these two fields are covered by women. Why is this the case? As Maria mentioned before, it is a pipeline issue. Women are not getting access to the right education at school, at university, later on in their careers. They are not able to study coding, computational thinking, problem-solving skills. These are the skills of the future. These skills are the ones needed for the future of jobs. And if we do not get women access to these skills, to the opportunity to learn about them, we will face a major gap moving forward.
Right, thank you. Access and scaling.
Thank you, Cheryl. So from my perspective, I think we have a leaky bucket when it comes to women in STEM that are in education versus those that arrive in corporates, and then finally those who do arrive in leadership positions. And by the time we get there, we lose from 36% and we get to 9%. So my message is, we've been on a slow journey. We need to leapfrog. If we need to leapfrog, the women and the men, all the leaders in this room, you and I, need to really bring that change. We need to champion recruiting. We talked about that, I think, just earlier with Indra. It's retraining and reskilling, because there is so much access now to be able to do a lifetime of learning. So it doesn't mean that if you didn't do STEM in your university days, you're precluded forever, and I'm a great believer in that. And the last one, of course, is retention. But it all comes down to leaderships and having really that role modeling and that championing right from the top, and getting rid of that leaky bucket, and maybe quadrupling the number of women in STEM in industry and in leadership.
So let me just pick up from that. So we have heard around pipelines, we have heard around access and scaling, and interestingly, something that you brought up is it's really about transitions. Are we able to transit from a role to role or from levels to levels and do that successfully so that we can narrow or we can stop that leaky bucket? Thank you. Helen.
Okay, so in my opinion, anyone who wants to succeed in 4 areas needs to consider the 4 following factors. First of all, women must have to knowledge and concept of personal branding, and special women working in field STEM. You know, it's the reason why STEM field in women is not developing, because in the fact of communication of the woman in this field is too weak. And they are not interesting to build symbol of women in STEM fields. And we can say that the women in STEM fields, they're not interesting to build personal branding, or they can go out to share information in the networking. So I think if we can do more personal branding out and build the role model to help the woman in STEM field, they can inspire another woman, especially with the young student. And the second thing is a woman need to know, increase to build the connecting, and how to say is we need to go out to share more. Especially, we need to think about how to inspire the parent of the girl student. Yeah, so when the parent of the girl student, they can understand more about how interesting and opportunity women work in STEM fields, so they can confident to convince them children. And I think the third, women often have certain fear about the technology. They think technology is not for them. And in my point of view, with the current development, women are taking advanced technology. because technology needs with soft skill from the woman when they can use technology. So I think if we can share more opinion, it's the opportunity for the woman in STEM field, so we can educate the market to invite more girls to join the STEM field, with my opinion.
Thank you very much. Aisha.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be with you today. STEM, if you want to interest girls, even boys, in STEM subject, it has to be fun. And then you have to demystify STEM subjects. And to do that, you have to go through the teachers. So teacher training is very important. Most of the time, some of them, they complicate the things, and it's so simple. You see, if you take chemistry, for instance, you say H2 plus O2 is H2O, okay? You have to have the same numbers here on the left side and the right side. How can you do that? Very easy, okay? You girl, you tell me. Well, H2, O2, so I have O2 here. How can I get the same number? Why won't we multiply this one here by 2? Then you have it. 2 H2O, H2O, and that's it. So they understand. One. Second, if you
can bring your mic a little bit closer.
Okay.
Yeah,
if you
so that the benefit is
you
through
see,
the room.
for instance, in Africa, I was a teacher, I was teaching, and the girl said to me, "We are not good in chemistry. We are not good in science." I said, "Don't you cook?" "Yes, we do." "This is chemistry." So it's just to explain to them that they can do it, just like the boys. The parents have to be also lobbied for them to explain to their daughters they should go into STEM, because at the end of the day, the job opportunities is great when you take STEMs. I'll stop there. The teacher training, the parents, and also the whole community coming together to work towards encouraging girls to go into STEM.
Right, can I just do a quick poll? I can't see all of you, but I could see some of you. How many of you in your growing up years in school found science or STEM related subjects fun?
It is
Fun.
fun.
Right, very good. We have a fair number of hands up, so there is something in there. Now my next question to you who put up your hand is, how have you reached out to women or young girls in your community and share with them the fun you had learning STEM? Yeah. Yes, and I think, would that be, thank you very much for those of you who participated, would that be, in your opinion, the way that we can go? I want to go backwards to connect with the community to make that change, to accelerate that process.
Right.
How else can we, because I hear from a community perspective, teachers, parents, community, right? And then looking at role models.
Role models.
And profiling of role models, right? And I hear, how do we leapfrog? I like the word leapfrog because we have been doing, we have been making small dents. How about we take a big hammer and make that big change? How can we leapfrog? Because if we were to do teachers, community, etc., it might take a long time. How can we leapfrog? And then we hear assess and scaling, and we hear in terms of implementation strategy, and in terms of metrics and visibility again. Putting all these together, how can we leapfrog? How can we, either cut short the amount of time for us to get acceleration, or how can we have the numbers that we want in the shorter time possible? How can we bring it together in an ecosystem? Who are the first few stakeholders that we need in place to get this, combustion going?
The parents.
Parents.
Men and women. We should never exclude the men. The boys. They also have to be part of the process. It's a shared responsibility. once we understand it, the process goes very fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question then now to the audience. How many of you have girls at home or girls in your community and you have been encouraging and talking to them about STEM, right? Opening their minds, right? So all of us here, whether your hands up or not, we all have a role to play, right? So we have heard very often that education, curriculum and all is a big leveler, the one that makes that difference. Now we are hearing communities, families, right? I learned very long ago, one of the ladies out from Microsoft told me, you know, Cheryl, I am in STEM because my teacher at 9 years old told me, who told you you can't do science? You can and you'll be brilliant in it. And she made that difference. So if we were to look at it from a personal branding perspective, what can we do from that perspective to amplify this message?
So you know, we talk about how to make the girl too interesting with the STEM, right? So when we have a role model, we have something interesting for the girl. People can see, if they want to go to like the fashion industry, they feel, very beautiful and interesting. So when they go to another like social media, they see very interesting lifestyle. But the STEM, they don't see anything interesting. So that's why they compare what they choose. So I think in the personal branding, with my opinion, we need to make more interesting, like this. I don't want to say the sexy thing, but it's the woman, the girls, they like something like interesting thing. Yeah, so we need to make it more, with the woman view. Yeah, we need to make the woman see, the girl see more fun, more beautiful, more interesting life and lifestyle, so they can follow the role model. They see the girl the woman in the same successful life, interesting life, and go around the world with successful story, so they will follow. I think we need to write, more the movie, more production film to talk about that. So the woman, the girl, they will follow the role model, with my opinion about that.
So that's in the engagement around media and social media platforms.
Of course, we have many successful ladies in STEM, but we don't have a media communication talk about them, right? So no one knows. That's why we need to have more media, more communication to share about the story of the woman successful in STEM. Yeah, so it is inspire another woman, another parent.
Okay. Then in your opinion, Vaishali, leapfrogging, rescaling, at what point in time, what kind of mindsets is needed? So we spoke about those that are probably still in high school, right, in education. We spoke about those that is already in a STEM environment. If somebody that is a mid-career, they want to do a switch, what would it take? How can we help and support in that transition so we can increase the numbers beyond just building from grounds up?
So look, if you want to be a professional engineer or scientist, I do think that formal education and that degree does become important. But STEM is much broader than that. STEM is also technology and the aspects of digital that come in, analytics that come in. And all those skills, in my view, are things that can be learned mid-career as well without a formal degree.
Exactly.
It requires just, as I said, it's a lifetime of learning for all of us and in fact for the next generation. So the old conceived ideas that absolutely we should go and make a difference at the schooling level, for sure. But I do believe that beyond that, we need to make a difference now in the careers of women as they are in business, because that's where we're going to get the multiplier effect in the short term. And I think there is so much more in digital, in technology, in analytics that you can be retrained for. I actively encourage it. I head a whole business at BCG on technology, media, and telecom. And it doesn't mean that you have to be engineers to enter. Of course, we do have a high proportion, but anybody, if they're interested, can spend time and energy learning these skills and coming up to speed and getting retrained. And I do think that can act as a pretty big multiplier, which then leads to the leapfrog, because we do have women in the workforce now, and if we could just interest them in pivoting to some of these areas, encouraging them, I think we would be very successful.
Right, so picking up from that, Natalia, from a mindset perspective, as an employer, for example, if I was in transition and I shift my whole career perspective into more STEM-oriented, I have that science base and I'm going into, say, something that's relating coding, etc. How would you bring someone like that on board into your team and make a success of the entire process?
Yes, it's a good question, Cheryl. I think one thing we all need to do is to make it easy for people, right? As we mentioned before, STEM is not necessarily fun or perceived to be fun. It's also complex. And a lot of the times, women have confidence issues, right, with these type of subjects. So we need to make it easy for them. And the way of doing this is actually by doing on-the-job training. If you have someone in your team who really wants to go into STEM, make it easy for that person. Give them access to free skilling. Give them access to on-the-job training. A lot of companies do not do this, right? They do not bring the skills to the people. If we do not make it easier for women, they will never make the transition.
Right, so that's from an organization perspective. As you work with the individuals, how might the individuals be prepared from a mindset or a skill set or a willingness perspective so that it is really a collaboration between the organization and the women themselves? How can women prepare for transitions?
I think it's about building their confidence, right? Telling them that they are good at this.
Yeah.
In many cases, women just think that STEM is not for them. It's a career for men. I'm not good at this. I won't do it. It's about changing that mindset. Through role models, as you mentioned before, but also through offering them all the different possibilities of STEM. If you study STEM, why do you study it? What is the output? Can you do a career in coding? Can you do AI? Can you do data scientist? What is the output of studying STEM? Why is it good? Where would it lead you? I think it's a question of raising the awareness of the opportunities that STEM brings in terms of career growth, career advancement, and finding a job. And women do not know this today.
How can we amplify that if, in the first place, they don't know that such a transition or pivot is possible? They would not know. So how can we amplify and make this known, besides the usual recruitment, right, or word of mouth?
It takes an army, I think. It's not only about the private sector, it's the public sector, it's governments, it's families, parents, as you mentioned before, it's the whole community. It takes all of us to change this.
So Maria, from your perspective, and you represent, the public sectors.
Well, there's something I would like to react, because I hear that STEM seems boring. I mean, this is not true. Science is fun. Science it's a way of stimulating your curiosity, stimulating your creativity, and I really think that we have to show that to young women, because there's a lot of job opportunities if you want to be part of solutions for climate change. Oh, sorry, I understood that this morning we say climate crisis, sustainable energy, finding new diagnostic for illness, finding new treatments for health. So for me, maybe I have a bias because I'm a scientist, but for me, science is fun. And so, of course, you were talking about shareholders, parents, definitely yes, school, definitely yes, the environment in your work, you have to retain them, and it's important these role models. In science, in my company, we're thinking about developing a new chart, in order to make women more visible in scientific workshops. And I think this is important because for us scientists, it's very important to publish and to explain your science, to explain your results. And often, you know, in these workshops, you just want the more well-known person, and they happen to be men. And so there's this chart, you know, for organization, research body organization to sponsor events only if they comply to some rules, making women visible. This is important for the scientists who will present their results, and it's also important for the audience, because in the audience you have young students, and they have to believe that, of course, I mean, they can make their way in this career and embrace STEM careers.
Right. Now, I want to, in order to build to that level of credibility, etc., there are some notions around women in STEM that we need to demystify and get rid of, so that it's sort of level that playing field already as it is. And Aisha, you have had many years working with parents, communities, and schools. If we were to say the biggest thing that we need to deal with right now and get rid of, what is that myth that we need to bust?
Well, before going to that, let me just remind you that we have 132 million girls that are out of school. How to bring them into technology, into science? I have seen 3 examples in the field of non-formal training. A father, what he did is to take all his girls out of 10th grade and train them into motor mechanics. They are the best today to fix a car which is broken in Guinea. In Sierra Leone, which was at that time a crisis, conflict country, 2 girls. One went into electricity, the other one plumbery. They are the best today. So we have to think of that also. Instead of just schooling. What about the ones that have not gone too far, who have never been?
Okay, so basically we got to go out, reach out and hold them by the hand, and then bring them into science and get them to get into the education and really see them through. And they will then be the so-called role models and stories that we can talk a little bit more about.
So that people will understand that all these jobs that used to be only for boys are also fit for girls.
Okay, so that's the pipeline where they're coming through from school, right? That the jobs that we think are for boys are also fit for the girls. And that's going to be a 3 to 5 year process if it is through education. What is the myth that we can deal with right now? If we want to accelerate, we want to 10 times the outcome right now, what might that be? Anybody?
Okay, so you know, with my experience with the woman, so behavior of the woman different with men, because you know I have a 7 year have develop a woman leader international network, and we try a lot of time to help the woman use the technology to do the business matching. So you know, with the men, it's easy to see how to get in, check in, and everything. So you know, but the women, they pass it. It's difficult. They don't care about that. They don't want to do the research, everything. You know. But we find a way to help the woman understand. But when women understand, they do very quick and very smart. They know how to use it, and they know how to get benefit from this. So I think the way we get the woman in need different with the men. We need to find a way with the woman's skill to help the woman understand more the benefit when they get the STEM field and technology. So now, step by step, the woman leader in my network, they're more interesting to use technology to do the business, and they do very good, better than men. Yes.
Right, so adopting, getting them to quickly adopt.
Yes, they adapt very quick.
Technology.
Yeah, but we need to know the way how to get them in.
Right, so. Yeah.
I would say that my way of going about this would be that, you know, we've been talking about STEM and we somehow see that as a, an intersection of, or maybe a subset of the broader other choices that women can make and do. I would argue and tell all the women, in fact, I do that to both men and women, that there is no future without STEM. Actually, it's going to be integral in every single profession. And you need to start, and you need to start on it today, whether you want to be a fashion designer or whatever else. At least learn digital, at least learn technology, at least learn a bit of data, analytics, etc. It will be integral in every single thing you do. And there is nothing in my mind called a separate circle of STEM out there. And that's the circle you can live in, or you can live in another circle. In my mind, there is only one big island in the future, and STEM is a critical part of that island for both men and women, and therefore there is no choice but to do STEM if you want to pursue anything else. And I think that resonates very well, rather than saying it's just one of those options out there, and maybe you do it and maybe you don't, because once people enter, it gets them interested. They find possibilities and things that they may have never experienced. So in my mind, STEM is not something out there, and there is an optionality.
So STEM as a way of being.
Exactly.
Right. STEM as a way of being.
That would be my philosophy.
Right from the beginning.
Exactly.
So that adopting STEM or a profession within the STEM, industry is not like a weird thing that you have to make a choice about. It's just part of the being, right?
And that has only become true in the last 10, 15 years. And I do believe that that will be a reality for our generation and the next generation to come.
All right, so living and breathing STEM as a way of being. Would you see that as a way forward? Would that be like if we like a magic pill that we should begin to see it right now so that we can see that growth, that change?
I would say yes and no. I think STEM is important. It is the future. It is a hard skill. I think STEM is not everything. I think that in order to be successful, in order to find the job or the future of your dreams, you need to also excel in soft skills. So soft skills such as networking, communication, organization skills, attention to detail. These are skills that as women, we are notoriously good at, and there's research that proves this. So for me, yes, STEM is important. Learning how to code, learning about technology is a must, but you also need to combine this with softer skills. You need to combine that with a human touch. And this is where the future of jobs is going. These are the skills that are required to succeed in the future.
If I may add something, and I would like to echo, because what you said, I totally agree. We're in a changing world, a digital world, which has main impacts in our daily lives. And I think it's really important that women get involved in STEM. And I don't want to bring a negative touch here, but for instance, in Europe and in France, there used to be like 30% of women in ICT, and that was in the 18th, and it has dropped to 15%, 10 to 15%. And I think this is worrying because you see such impact in this digital transformation. And there was a session this morning about intelligence, artificial intelligence, and I think that it's important that women be in the game, because having all these algorithms that are conceived, that are developed only by men, then we will introduce new bias. And so I think it's important to, encourage women to go into these areas. As you mentioned, it's a area where there will be a lot of jobs, high value added jobs. If I take just one figure from France, it is said that we will need more than 220,000 new jobs in France in this area. So it's a sustainable area, and where we need talents, both men and women.
I have another question, to you, all of you. We have out there 750 million people who are not literate. How to bring them on board? and be part of the process in STEM.
Right. So go to the green field and start from there instead of trying to change something that is within here.
Because we cannot leave them there. They have to be part of the process.
Right.
How do you do that?
That's like starting from a clean slate, isn't it? That's probably one of the ideas that is the 10x, if somebody dares to take that up, right? I'm going to have my panel answer one more question, but in the meantime, I'd like the audience, if you have any burning questions, please get them ready, because we're going to start opening the floor for questions in a minute. I'd like to pick up where we talk about how do we get the different stakeholders to work together, because at this moment we have transition, pivots, right? We have different things about visibility. We have different things around education and the workplace, etc. It seems like everybody's trying to do the different pieces together. But how do we get? Do we need to get to a point where we say, this is the overarching, strategy. Everybody, this is how we're going to piece this together, because everybody's trying to do our own piece right now. Ideas.
I actually am a believer of it takes many different pieces to build a mosaic. So, the more, I think as long as there's awareness in as us as individuals, as parents of girls, out there in the community, contributing back to school, business, I think each of us, as I said, needs to champion it. And if there is a significant number of people championing it in public sector, in business, elsewhere, I think that change will happen. I personally am not a believer that you need one integrated view to change things. As long as there is enough momentum, I think the change will happen. And that's what we need to drive, that people participate in whatever capacity they have to drive that change.
Okay. Natalia.
I think one thing sometimes we forget is that normally those women or girls who access STEM come from educated, high-income families or backgrounds. What about all those girls or women who live in rural areas, who live in poorer areas, who do not have access to the same opportunities? I think we cannot forget them.
Yes. And I was out in the US, and I went to an entire community, and the entire community's investment is in women and girls, teaching them tech-related skills, digital transformation-related skills, and that they then become the ones that will support the businesses around them. So it's really, like you said, the many hands, the community coming together and contributing into the industries. Yourself?
Yeah, I would like also to add, I think it's a mixture of incentives. These incentives can be legal ones and also practical incentives that can be done in the companies. It was mentioned, about in the previous session, women in boards. In France, we had this law in 2011, making compulsory to have at least 40% of each sex in boards. And you can imagine there was a lot of, it has been very vocal, because we would not find these women, then we're not competent. And if you look at the figures, in France, we did manage now to have 44% of women in boards in the listed companies. And this was before the end of the date, because we were to achieve these numbers in 2020, and we already achieved, and we went above. So I think that sometimes you have to make you have to have legal tools. So it's a combination of you were talking about stakeholders. I mean, at the political level, and also at our own level, we are ourselves shareholders, stakeholders, and I think that it's not always easy. I'm not very comfortable today because I'm not used to speak in such an audience, but I think it's important, to move away from your zone of comfort, because it's important that we make ourselves visible and have more impact. And this we can do also in, involving the senior management. So when you're in a board, you can involve the senior management because it's also important to have these, model roles and to have women in high leading positions.
Right, thank you.
So, okay, so we talk about how to invite and the stakeholder, right? So is in my business, I need to understand very deeply the markets, and we need to know the habit of the customer. So I choose the woman leader to research about them, to understand how they think, and because the women they play the role to make the family choose something for the family, and they make the role for the family. So when we understand the woman and we make the environment good for the woman, they can develop very quick. So that's why we build the Woman Leader International Network to help the women do business together and educate them about the technology. So we try to help the woman every week. We have a business lunch. Then we can invite the speaker to share for the woman something new and make them help them more beautiful, more successful, and happier. So when the women, they have a good environment, they feel confident, and they can develop themselves very good. So that's why the way we can invite the customer or the woman to join technology.
Right, so the understanding what might be motivating women to make that transition is one. Having organizations embarking on their journey in terms of giving them the incentives to get to the tipping point is the other. And I want to congratulate Maria. She was really very nervous coming out here and talk about this. But guess what? If every one of us in the room can put aside our nervousness and just advocate for one girl to be in STEM, or ask yourself at the end of the day, did I make space? Did I encourage somebody to consider STEM as a role? Did I make the environment inclusive for women that's in STEM? That's already pushing the envelope and creating that momentum, right? So think about that. What can we do as individuals in this room? Yes, Aisha, a final round of words around, because I want to be able to take at least some questions if we do have them. Yes.
We should never think of women as victims, but as agents of change. And we have to use what we call the Ubuntu values, meaning I am because we are. So working together, invest in women and girls' education.
Right.
Key to bringing everybody into STEM, boys and girls, men and women.
Right. Not as victims, but as equals. Remove the barriers for the best talent.
Agents of change.
Right, okay.
Change makers.
As I started by saying, the leaders can make a difference in recruiting, in retraining or reskilling, and in retention. And if we just had more leaders who just leaned in, and all of us are leaders here, I think that would make a huge difference. And the second thing that I just talked about, and just to complement what Natalia said, I do think STEM is integral, and I did say that. I didn't say it's the only thing. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that as soon as we get women to understand that STEM is an integral part, one component of whatever they choose to do in their future, I think we will already make huge success.
Right. Just have it in the diet for at this point in time. Right. Any final words around?
Yes. I was saying being more visible, and I think that being here at the Women's Forum, for me, I've learned a lot, and I would really like to thank you, because I think that when I will go back home, I felt so much energy here, and so much, I heard so many inspiring people, men, women. So it really gives you the energy when you come back, to be more proactive. And so I thank you for that, because I'm really sure that I will try to be more proactive when I come back to my work.
Any final words?
I would say something very quickly. And I come from Google, as you know. And for us at Google, everything is about making information and technology useful, accessible, and available to everyone. And for me, this mission also is related to STEM. Let's make it easy. Let's make it accessible to people, to women. If we do not make it easy, if we don't lower down the barriers, women will not be able to learn these skills. Women will not be able to make the most of the opportunities that STEM brings.
Right. Thank you.